Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. My name is Guy Edwab. I'm the Chief Technology Officer with Explore Analytics, and I'd love to get started and introduce you to how Explore Analytics can be used for proactive security incident response using real-time dashboards. So the idea behind leveraging Explore Analytics, real-time dashboards, and KPIs and trends is that security is both a process and a culture. Right. What we're aiming for is not just to have a specific individual or a team of individuals going and addressing security concerns. It really needs to be something that you can spread throughout the organization, where as issues come up, you have a set process that engages all of the stakeholders to be able to easily respond and complete those security incidents. So everything that we're looking at today is going to be from a perspective of baking in security as part of the process and part of the culture throughout your organization. And the reason that we're looking at this in terms of real-time dashboards is because there's a distinction between reporting in terms of KPIs and real-time dashboards. And sometimes these get very mixed together. So I want to talk about how both of those have a role to play when it comes to security. The idea is that with KPIs, you're measuring the process to understand how well you're doing at performing. So for example, what's the average age of incidents that have been reported to security? That's the KPI, so that executive management can say, okay, how are we doing at resolving these in a timely manner? Meanwhile, the live report is how are you going to enable your organization to actually drive that process better? So on the right, you can see this aging report where you're breaking down those security incidents based on how long they've been open. Something that's live, that's drillable, that the people can actually take action on in order to improve that KPI that's on the left. And the goal is to really have both of these in one solution and have them aligned in such a way that you're actually not just measuring the process, but driving that process to an improved conclusion. So another example might be, if the issue is making sure that your CIs are updated in a timely fashion, the KPI might be average time since the CIs were last updated. And again, you want to put in front of those service owners, how long has it been since the CIs in the services you're responsible for, how long has it been since they last been updated? So with live reports, we're going to want to tailor them towards the behavior that improves the KPIs that are our strategic goals. Again, that's what makes it a process and a culture, is by baking it into the workflow and the habits of people throughout the organization. Now, an important part of this is seeing an example of this. We have a Fortune 50 beverages company that uses Explore Analytics. They're a global IT organization, and they wanted to make sure that issues that were reported to the organization were handled in a very quick manner. So I wanted to highlight what they called stale incidents that hadn't been actioned within X amount of time. They had been tracking that as a KPI, but once they actually moved towards having a real-time dashboard similar to that aging report that drove people to actually focus on those stale incidents, they saw a 30% improvement within the first few months because, again, they were aligning the behavior, the process, and the culture to the actual strategic delivery that they were trying to complete. Similarly, there's a 1450 manufacturing company. For them, a lot of it was looking at the quality of business services and the quality of delivery on those business services. They actually had an issue early on migrating from Revity to ServiceNow because in their organization, they didn't want a centralized approach to the CMDB and to services. They wanted service owners to be able to drive their own reporting. So Explore Analytics was a tool that allowed them to complete that migration because the service owners themselves could take ownership over data quality and over the resolution of issues that were reported. So again, what we're seeing here is this idea that rather than having a security organization doing all the work, when you have real-time reports and you're distributing them throughout the organization, you can bake security as a process and as part of the culture of everyone. Your database teams, your first and second line support, everyone who needs to be involved in the security process, you can think about how you can bake the security aspects of their role into their real-time dashboards to make sure that they're tackling that in a way. And we'll show some examples of that when we see the live demo of the solution in just a moment. So as we were saying about the dashboarding approach, you want to have one solution that's really an end-to-end reporting solution for the KPIs and the real-time dashboards, right? You want something that really unifies all of that together. So that's where Explore Analytics comes in. With Explore Analytics, you don't have to have walls between KPIs or your real-time dashboards or even your ad hoc reports. Explore Analytics is one tool that can reach in real time to ServiceNow and to other sources of data and be able to unify that for ServiceNow and also for other sources of data. So for example, if you have a one-time question about what types of servers don't have proper patches, you can just drag and drop to create those reports. If that's something that you want to bake into everyone's process, you can then publish those as real-time dashboards. And if beyond that, you want to turn those into standard KPIs that you track over time, you can do that. And it's just step to go through all of those. And we'll show a real example of that in just a moment. But the key is that Explore Analytics is the only solution that goes end to end from all of these different types of reports in one interface, in one way of doing it, and can reach into ServiceNow as well as other sources of data. So the way that Explore Analytics works, we have one cloud solution, and as users are using it, they can reach in real time to ServiceNow. Or if you have vulnerabilities that's being tracked in a third-party solution that's in a SQL database, or if you have another cloud platform that's covering a certain segment of patching histories or things like that, Explore Analytics can include that as part of the reporting landscape, again, without you having to migrate that data into ServiceNow or migrate ServiceNow data out. The net of it is that you can touch all these different areas of data with one reporting solution without requiring ETL or migration and present that as part of your everyday process. And now let's take a look at how this works in practice. And I'm going to show an example of a security and operations dashboard that kind of highlights some of these. So right now you're looking at this ServiceNow Explore Analytics dashboard embedded inside ServiceNow. So yours might look different depending on what version you are. Explore Analytics is supported from back in the Berlin release up through pre-releases that haven't been publicly released yet. But regardless, Explore Analytics will look as though it's part of the user interface. Again, part of making it a part of the culture and part of the process is having it seamlessly integrated into the user interface. So now if I'm on the security and operations team and I want to see everything that's going on inside the organization, I have here at the top the kind of key KPIs. How is the average age of security incidents? How often are they bouncing around from group to group? How is it, as a proportion of all of the users? What's the median time to resolve? All of that in kind of one KPI place. But it's also mixed with some real-time look at what's going on inside the environment. Where you can start to see this put together is this hourly security incidents. This is a great example of why KPIs and real-time information put together is really powerful. What this is showing is by hour of the day, in this column, what's the average number of security incidents that we typically get during that time of day? We can see that it tends to be higher, earlier in the day based on perhaps our business hours. And in the same report, a real-time report of what's been going on today. Now, one thing that leaps out thanks to our coloring rules and our calculations is that today at about 5 a.m., we had a 20% above usual number of incidents. And you can see that actually all the rest of the day, we were significantly below the average. So immediately, first thing I come in the morning with a cup of coffee, I see this dashboard and I say, hey, wait a second, this looks way out of whack. And I can drill through the details and actually see the list of incidents that are sitting behind that. So it's already taking me and driving me to look at those particular issues, to take action on them straight from here. Again, part of making this a process and a culture is designing these dashboards to drive the behavior that you want. Right? Again, I'm immediately seeing what's out of the ordinary so that I can drill through and take action on it. Same with looking at this at a global level. So I can see, location by location, in this case, what types of issues we're having. So I can immediately see that we had a whole bunch of issues in the United States of a variety of different types. And if I wanted to, I could, drill through and take a look at that information as well. So this is an example of looking at it from the security team's perspective. And if I wanted to, I could slice within that to look at just particular categories or subcategories of those security incidents. But one of the things I said at the top was that part of making this baked into all of the organization is being able to make this part of the process of every part of the organization. So this is an example looking at it from the perspective of an owner of a business service. So this might be, people who own particular applications. In yours, it might be particular locations. Again, this might not be the security team itself, but it might be parts of the IT organization that are working side by side. Now, because I'm logged into Explore Analytics through ServiceNow, it knows who I am. So it's actually filtering to show me just the business services where I'm listed as the owner. This is something that only we can do in terms of reporting. It's something very unique to Explore Analytics. We're dynamically filtering based on those business services. So I can see BlackBerry, the IT services, and bond trading I'm responsible for. And all of these other reports are also similarly focused on those business services that belong to me. And you can see that it's including both information about security incidents. So I can see, that for some of my services, there are some security issues that have been left open longer than 30 days. Again, that's something that I might want to drill through and take immediate action on. And I can also take a look at, well, what's going on over the course of time for my service, what kinds of issues have we been seeing? So for example, if I wanted to see, how are we doing at unpatched vulnerabilities? And I can see immediately how that's changed over time. I can, walk through that. Maybe actually what would be more interesting to me is to switch this to a line chart and see, okay, well, what's the trend here? And maybe forecast that out. Are we moving up or are we moving down? Again, just as a viewer of this report, I don't even have to be someone who's building these reports. I can move through that very easily. How do I want to see the report? What information do I want to see in the report? So that as a service owner, I feel empowered and I feel part of the security management process so that I can say, hey, these unpatched vulnerabilities, that seems like something that, maybe our code release team, maybe our software development team needs to be taking a look at, right? It's something that we should all be involved in and understanding when we're seeing this information. It's also very easy for me to drill down into information. So for example, if I look at this CIs with data quality issues, again, keeping an up-to-date CMDB is as much an issue of security as everything else. I can see here, okay, these are the ones that have data quality issues. A lot of them are incomplete. So let me see what types, what classes of CIs have those issues by drilling down. So I'm actually going to another report that's showing me where in our stack is that issue. And then I could say, well, show me just those Apache web servers where we have incomplete data. And here's that list of Apache servers. So again, we're able to go very easily from the long-term trend down to specifics of what's going on in real time now, and then take action on that so that we can then drive this to resolution. One of the tips that I always give to organizations when you're thinking about that is, often we have a very good idea of what these KPIs are, right? What's the reassignment count? What's the average age? How many incidents, security incidents are there? In this case, we're actually baselining it per the number of users. So if we hire 200 extra people, we would expect to see more incidents, but hopefully the same amount of incidents per user. So my advice is always take a look at these KPIs and ask yourself, what kind of actions do we want to take in order to influence that, and turn that into dashboards that have real-time ways to take action on that, right? So again, if the age, if we're having a big push to lower the average age of those incidents, then you're going to need an aging report that breaks that down into how long have particular incidents been opened. Now, the last thing I wanted to highlight is that everything I've shown in these dashboards are very easy for a business user to be able to develop for themselves. So for example, this is an aging report where active is true, where it's created during the last 30 days. We don't necessarily need that. And I can say, okay, let me group it into bins. So for example, in this case, I'm doing 0 to 2 days, 2 to 15 days, et cetera, et cetera. But if I wanted to change that, that's just something that the user who's building those reports puts together. So maybe I want 0 to 7, select it that way. All of this is drag and drop. It's real time. If I wanted to do it by assignment group instead of priority, I just drag and it brings me back those incidents in that way. I can also very easily do a calculation. So instead of showing the number, if I want to show what's this as a percent of the total for each group, I can say percent of row. And instead of saying, hey, there are 7% of them are, in the 0 to 7 days, it's actually showing to me all of them were 0 to 7 days. So the net of this, just to bring this back, is that we want you to be able, with Explore Analytics, to have those real-time operational dashboards where you're getting data up to the minute and able to take action on it, and mirror those to those KPIs. We want you to be able to distribute that to anyone throughout the organization so that they can take action on it. And we want to make this so that any business user is able to build those reports for themselves. None of those reports that we've shown require any administrator to set up any data collection. It doesn't require any ETL tool, and it doesn't require any changes that would require update sets or code changes or anything that would need to go through change control. So it makes it very easy for you to, again, allow business service owners, your security operations team, anyone who's involved in this process to build those reports for themselves. So you're leveraging a self-service reporting approach to be able to change that process internally. So thank you for joining. We had time just to touch on a few of those areas. If there's any questions, I will open this up for questions. You can use the chat functionality that's in the group chat. Great. So the question was in terms of being able to try this for yourself. So all of Explore Analytics, it's self-service, including getting access to it. So if you go to my.exploreanalytics.com/registration, I'd be happy to follow up with that link. You can sign up for a 30-day free trial. It's fully featured, so you can connect it live to ServiceNow, connect it live to other sources of data, and get started sharing that information out. Any other questions? Great. Well, thank you for joining today. We'll have a recording of this session that we'll be happy to share so that you can pass this along to other members in your team if they weren't able to make today. If there's any further questions or if you want to set up a one-on-one, a demonstration, if you want to try out some use cases together, I'm happy to help. If you just respond back to the invitation to this webinar, I'd be happy to set up that time. Thank you all and have a great rest of your day.